Hello, welcome to MCN and the 2021 MCN Fleet Kawasaki ZX-10R. I'm Ben, I'm the assistant editor of the Motorcycling Hub at Bauer Media, and I've been riding for just over 14 years now. My background is slightly more off-road, but in recent years I've been getting more into road bikes and sports bikes, and 2 years ago I had a CBR 650R. For a year I did almost 22,000 miles on that. You can read all about that on our long-term test page. And last year I had a Tenere 700 and went and explored a little bit more off-road. So this year I was really hungry to get back on track, do some track days with something with a bit more sporting intent. And the first thing to say about this ZX-10R is that it isn't completely standard. So it has got the performance pack fitted to it. So that means that you get the smoke screen, there's a carbon effect exhaust, and a couple of other little bits like these tank protectors. That takes the price of the bike up to almost £17,000. So it is a little bit more expensive than the standard bike, but they're quite nice touches. So they're quite nice things to have. Now the ZX-10R, as you would expect, is fast as all hell, but you might be surprised how long it takes to get going. So coming out of a corner on track in first gear, a really slow, tight corner, you'll be getting beaten by all sorts of stuff. KTM big bore singles will be coming past you, 600cc sports bikes, because it's so tall geared. But then halfway down the straight, when the revs pick up and everything really kicks in, it's just trying to pull your arms off. It's so fast, as you'd expect for a ZX-10R and the reputation that it has. The thing that you sacrifice in order to have that speed is comfort. I've ridden Ducati Panigales, I've ridden M1000 RRs, I've ridden all sorts of top-end sports bikes, and this is definitely the least comfortable of the lot. Most of the reason for that is that the seat's quite low and the pegs are really high. They're actually 5mm higher than they were on the previous generation, which was already well known for being quite an uncomfortable bike. So on track or twisty B roads, or any time that you're moving your weight around all the time on the bike, you don't really notice. But if you sit on the motorway for more than about 10 minutes, your knees start to really cry out. And we're now mid-November, I'm wearing full textiles with the lining in. Pulling my knees up to get my feet onto the pegs is starting to be a real pain. There's no bones about it. The handlebars are also set forward and splayed out compared to previous generations, something that Jonathan Rea apparently wanted. So they're more like motocross style setup, but that just moves them even further away from you. So your riding position is only ever going to be sporty. Trying to sit up is not really an option. You do get a couple of little creature comforts with the bike though. It's not an all-out track beast. So you've got riding modes, the wet mode, road mode and performance or sport mode. It only affects the throttle response and moves the traction control up and down, but you can have a user operated mode where you can set your own traction control, wheelie control, that sort of thing. On the road, I find that you're best off leaving it in road mode unless you're really having a spirited ride. You can also set the engine braking control to on, which stops you getting any chop and surge throttle when you're trying to hold a constant speed on the road. Anytime that you're just trying to get from A to B and you want to sweep through the traffic, that's the most comfortable way to ride the bike. Then obviously when you're on track, you just have it all out, everything's set as high as you can. So the other creature comfort that you get that's really important on a bike this focused is cruise control. And that might sound really daft because you're never going to use it on track. But if you can set the cruise control, it means you can take your right hand off the bar and shake it out, get rid of any numbness or soreness that you've got going on. And it lets you sit a little bit more upright if you've taken your hand off the right handlebar. So the cruise control actually does help with the comfort a little bit. The buttons on the switchgear are really well laid out and simple to use as well. The dash is TFT now, full colour, whereas the previous generation was black and white. The only thing it's really missing is a proper fuel gauge. You get a reading that tells you how many imperial gallons you have in the tank, which isn't really much use to man or beast. It would be really nice if they swapped out one of the lean sensors or brake and throttle sensors and just gave you a proper fuel gauge on there. That would be a really nice touch. In terms of fuel consumption, the longest measured run I've done was on the way out to Wales, including Snake Pass, a little bit of motorway, a little bit of inner city riding, and I actually managed to return 51 miles per gallon, which I was really surprised with. I thought it would be thirstier than that. Obviously on track it drinks fuel, but if you're riding fairly sensibly on the road, which is easier to do than you might expect because the gearing is so tall that if you short shift through the gears, it doesn't give you that instant hit of power at all times. If you short shift, you get quite a modest acceleration from it, and there's just enough torque to get you around a lorry or a tractor or whatever, but not enough to be lifting the front wheel or for you to really have to concentrate. The gearbox on the ZX-10R is really, really slick. If you're riding hard on track and you're getting up to that red line, it's like having a robotic switch change gear for you. It's just instant from gear to gear. There's no gap at all. If you're doing slightly lower speeds and you've not got the throttle fully open, there can be a bit more of a laboured gap as the power's off and the quick shifter does its job. Downshifts are an absolute pleasure, and with this exhaust as well, it actually sounds slightly louder than the normal bike. It's throatier and a fuller sound, and those auto blips on the way down the gears, bow, 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 it just sounds fantastic. I've put a few little guards and a little bit of protection on this aftermarket ones from Evotech Performance. They're really, really good quality just to keep everything safe. The most important of which is the brake lever guard, which allowed me to take it on track, because that's now a rule at track days that you have to have one. I actually got scuffed into by another rider who overcooked his braking area on a left-hander, scuffed past the right-hand side of my bike, and you can see the little mark where it happened, but that's it. It really did its job. No damage to the lever, and luckily I stayed upright as well, which is the main thing. So they are really, really good addition to the bike. Headlights. You don't tend to think of headlights so much, but now the nights are drawing in and I'm actually using it as a bit of a commuter. The headlights are starting to come in. They're really good. They're powerful. They've got a lovely wide beam. The only slight problem is that if you're accelerating hard, you get flashed by oncoming traffic because they're so bright. As you accelerate and they pitch up, a lot of other drivers on the road think that you're on your main beam. So that can be a bit annoying, but it's less annoying for you than them, I suppose, because you're able to see nice and far ahead. Really impressed with those headlights. The other thing I've done is change the tyres. So it comes on Bridgestone RS11 tyres, which are kind of sport into track day tyres. And they take quite a long time to warm up. Once they're warm, on a nice hot sunny day, they're really excellent tyres. Ever so stable mid-corner. They do take a little bit of time for the bike to tip in. They make it quite wide steering feeling, especially on the road if you're on really tight sections. So I've swapped them over to Michelin Power 5s, which are a new tyre this year, which is they're still sporty, but they're slightly more in the road zone than the OE tyres. And they warm up much quicker, much more confident on roundabouts first thing in the morning when it's still a bit cold and fresh. They're a softer carcass, so you can actually feel the plushness in the ride a little bit. Because this is quite a firm bike, it's not as firm as I expected it to be, because there's no adjustable suspension like you get with a top spec Panigale or anything like that. The suspension is set as it's set, and it's firm on the road, but not too firm. But obviously on track you want it to be as firm as you can, really. Now, the ZX-10R has Brembo brakes, and they're powerful, but they don't have that instant bite that you get with, say for example, a BMW. So on the road, they're absolutely fine. On the track, they start to feel like they're letting you down a little bit. You can't confidently brake as late because the ABS module is almost too clever and you don't know how much braking power you're going to get. It makes it very, very difficult to set a brake marker and then stick to it, because if the bike decides that I've done something wrong, it will just lift the brakes off and you can't switch that off. It's also got a 6-axis IMU. So if you are trail braking into a corner, trying to learn that skill, the bike, as soon as it starts to feel the lean, just starts to bleed the brakes off for you when you run wide. And again, you can't switch that off. So there's plenty of ultimate power in the brakes, and in an emergency stop situation on the road, you're not going to wish for any more. But it would be nice if the ABS was a little bit less intrusive and gave you more feel, as it does on some of the European bikes. Now, the looks of the ZX-10 are divisive. A lot of people have told me that it's a face only its mother could love. Personally, I love it. I think it's muscular and aggressive. The whole thing's luminous green, like a Kawasaki is supposed to be. I think if you're going to have a bike like this, why not have one that looks like this? It's not pretending that it's anything else. It's not got any retro flourishes or brushed aluminium or anything like that. It's just a straight up bright green plastic liter bike like you had in the 90s. It's brilliant. I love it. So I've had the ZX-10R for about 7 months now. I've used it on track, I've used it on the road, I've used it as a commuter, and I've gone on a long distance trip with it with luggage strapped to it. And the thing is, you can do all of those things. It's not brilliant as a road bike. It's not great as a commuter. Cold November mornings, you feel like an idiot climbing on it. But if you hit a dry patch of road, you just have brilliant, brilliant fun in it, and it makes up for all its shortcomings. And I think a bike that has problems and things that you have to work around or ride around actually ends up having more character than a bike that's just perfect in every way and never puts a foot wrong. I've really, really enjoyed my time with this bike, and I'll be sad to see it go. Thanks for watching. There's plenty more content on MCN's YouTube channel. Remember to like and subscribe so you don't miss it.